The past 20 years, the Triangle has been home to one of the hottest independent music scenes in the country, thanks to one Durham-based record label. David Hubbard and Peter Bell have the story.
Good evening, Chapel Hill.
William Shakespeare wrote, "If music be the food of love, play on." For the past 20 years, one North Carolina band and their independent music label has been doing just that. In the summer of 1989, Mac McCaughan and Laura Balance were two college students living in Chapel Hill. They formed Superchunk, and the band quickly caught the attention of the entire music industry. They played fast, loud, and they played with infectious enthusiasm.
And they were certainly the band that everybody was touting as the next big thing when people were calling Chapel Hill the next Seattle in the wake of Nirvana.
That same summer, Mac and Laura created an independent label. They called it Merge Records, taking inspiration from a road sign on a Colorado highway.
Part of the reason we started Merge was that all these bands kept coming in and out of existence, and there would be no document that they ever existed. It seemed like a good idea and a fun thing to do at the time, but I certainly didn't think it was going to last 20 years.
You say you have a record label and people say, "Oh, it's like a recording studio?" You say, "No, it's not a recording studio." And they say, "Oh, like you manufacture CDs there?" I was like, "Oh, we don't really do that either, you know."
So what does a record label do? Traditionally, they help record, distribute, and promote music by the bands they represent. In the early 90s, Merge released singles by local North Carolina artists. They were still borrowing money from friends and family to finance each release one at a time.
Well, Merge basically started out as a corner of a bedroom in somebody's house. You know, it's not like they had an office with employees or anything. It was just, Laura and Mac.
In the beginning, neither thing was very big, and the label wasn't doing a ton of things. When Superchunk would go on tour for 3 months, just kind of nothing would happen with the label. So eventually, we hired employees, starting with one and then adding, one here and one there. People to the staff who could keep it going when Superchunk was on tour.
While the label was finding its footing, Superchunk was taking off. The band released 3 critically acclaimed albums with New York-based Matador Records and toured consistently through the early 90s. By the mid-90s, Merge was putting out full-length albums, including those by Superchunk. Dave Manconi is the music critic at Raleigh's News and Observer.
Coming up on Merge's 5 years, it was a pretty modest undertaking still. By the time the 10-year anniversary rolls around in the late 90s, it's going from kind of Superchunk supporting Merge to Merge supporting Superchunk.
Superchunk started slowing down anyway in terms of how much we wanted to be on the road. Simultaneously, Merge was, getting bigger and bigger and busier and busier.
The respite from the road allowed Mac and Laura to nurture the label in ways they could not during Superchunk's early years. Merge signed more artists and released more records than ever before. But they never forgot why they started the label in the first place.
Laura and I are operating the label as label owners, but also as, musicians ourselves and artists ourselves, and so I feel like that gives us a unique perspective.
Merge's 14 employees take pride in the fact that they are not a major label. They give the band complete artistic control over the music.
They are the artists and we're the record label, and we don't want to tell them how to make their record.
We're DC tomorrow, and then we have run up the East Coast up to Boston and back.
One recent addition to the Merge roster is the young Baltimore band Y Oak. Merge signed the duo after hearing one of their songs on a popular music blog.
Going from band nobody's ever heard of to band nobody's ever heard of on Merge, right off the bat, it's like a huge step up for us. They've been able to talk us through being a young band, just starting out, and any advice that we need, they're there for us.
And I think it speaks a lot to sort of the artistic and business ethic of the whole label, that we were two kids who they had never met, never heard live. They kind of just trusted us.
Providing backline logistical support is one thing, but getting the public to pay attention to your music is a whole other challenge.
It was a pleasure playing for you. We'll see you next time.
Grayson Karn is the music editor at the Independent Weekly in Durham.
I think Merge is a very utilitarian label. Merge works really hard. They put out a lot of records, and they put out a lot of records that are always pretty good, sometimes outstanding.
That work ethic and dedication to the craft has been the driving force behind the label's success.
I mean, our business model doesn't really make sense. It's like putting out records we like, you know. But it's worked, and it's interesting because in the last few years we've had, you know, our biggest selling records, you know, records by the Arcade Fire and Spoon and She and Him.
Another perfect merge release.
Their success with Arcade Fire, a rock and roll band from Montreal, catapulted the once niche label to a major player in the record business.
Well, it's been great for the label. It's meant we have more resources to hopefully help promote the smaller bands on the label too. That's our goal.
You're still putting out records that you hope appeal to people who are, you know, 20 years old now, and people who were 20 years old when we were 20 years old.
WKNC 88.1. A little bit of 1994 Superchunk there for you with Drive.
Kelly Reed is a DJ and former programming director at WKNC, NC State's college radio station.
They love music. Mac and Laura love music. And their love of music has caught up to them.
As the music industry continues to deal with declining record sales, Merge forges ahead.
Things are changing so fast. And when I look at Merge, and there is no letter from Merge saying we're cutting back. Merge is not saying we're stopping distribution, or when they're not stopping, they're continuing.
Merge has been around for 20 years, but we've grown very slowly over that 20 years, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're still around is because we never said, like, oh, we're a record company now, we have to be a certain way.
As for Superchunk, the band may be entering its third decade, but its members are not ready for their final encore.
They have this energy where they're all moving. You know, Laura is lost in playing her bass. The famous pogo where she jumps up and down, kind of and bounces. Jim Wilbur, you see him like doing these crazy, you know, circles and like leaning into his amp and like rushing back to the front of the stage. And Mac's face is red and he's like leaning in the microphone. And, you know, John Worcester is like a comedian and he's just like back there pounding these drums.
As Louis Armstrong said, musicians don't retire. They stop when there's no more music in them.
Merge Records celebrates its 20th anniversary this week with 5 nights of concerts in Scarborough and Chapel Hill. Merge fans can also look forward to the September release of a new biography called Our Noise, written by Matt Laura and author John Cook.